Welcome to LRA Live, presented by Republic National Distributing Company with support from Jack Daniel's Whiskey. I'm Wendy Warren, Vice President of Communications for the Louisiana Restaurant Association. LRA Live is designed to aid you in charting your next steps as we continue to navigate 2020 and beyond. We hope the information presented in this two-day series benefits you at a time when you need it the most. Remember to drink responsibly and make your next whiskey order a Jack Daniel's.
It's
Check out this video.
But
I've always wanted to do that.
We'll have one of everything. I always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do that.
1, 2, 3.
I've always wanted to do that.
I always wanted to do that! I always wanted to do that. Next round on me.
Soon enough, we'll all be drinking a Jack Daniel's. I've had a chance to get to know our next presenter better over the last few weeks in preparation for today. Welcome to Troy Cox. How you doing?
Hello, thank you, Wendy.
Troy's going to talk to us about how restaurant marketing is evolving in the COVID world. It's rapidly changing due to the pandemic, and consumer habits are evolving as a result. Whether it be dining in or takeout, your restaurant establishment should be well positioned in the consumer's consideration set, rooted in personal connections, trusted safety measures, and a marketing plan that helps your brand break through the clutter. Troy Cox is the partner and chief strategy officer for Brand Society, and he's here to tell us how. Brand Society is based in New Orleans, provides strategic market positioning with tactical, traditional, and digital media planning for various classes of trade throughout the Gulf South region. He's been with Brand Society for 7 years, and his team has developed and implemented successful and measurable marketing, advertising, and branding efforts for dozens of restaurants, including a few he's going to show us and tell us about today who are very well-known members. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Wendy, and thank you for inviting me to participate today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and make sure that you guys can see our presentation here. So let me know how I'm doing. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Not yet.
Let's try that again. There we go. You should be coming up soon.
Yes.
How's that? All
Yes.
right. All right. Minor technical difficulty there, but we should be good to go.
There we go.
All right. Once again, I'm Troy Cox with Brand Society. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Just quickly recap, who we are as an organization, as a firm. We're located in downtown Louisiana traditionally, but today we kind of look like this. This is what our daily meetings look like. This may be familiar to some of you all, but we're slowly but surely making our way back in our office, which is located in Canal Place, just across the street from Harrah's. We speak brand. It's why we called our company Brand Society. We always start with strategic insights about who our partners are. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. And we've had some serious combined experience with the folks on our staff here, some instantly recognizable restaurant brands that you may see on this screen that range from QSR restaurants to single unit fine dining establishments that are located throughout the Gulf South. So let's talk a little bit about what we'll cover today. You know, the title of the presentation was Evolving Marketing Strategies while we go through this pandemic. But this entire event is about recovery marketing. So we're going to talk a bunch about how we need to be smart and strategic with a plan. You know, it's always important to be disciplined in anything we do, operationally or marketing wise. And we're going to talk about how we should approach that relative to our marketing game. We're going to talk about some things what we call personas. These are behaviors and attitudes and beliefs, really understanding who your customers are. You know, if you have a quick serve restaurant, your customers and your daily intake of traffic is going to be quite different than a fine dining establishment on a Friday night. And we need to understand these things before we spend any money relative to active, traditional, or digital media. I'm going to walk through some examples on how that process works. We love to talk about establishing a clear tone and voice, talking with your customers and not at them. This is important in today's digital world, and content is super engaging and important these days. And we're gonna review how that fits into our overall strategies and plans that become measurable. Once all that's done, I'll speak a little bit about affordable integration, technology, and targeted ads. Super affordable ways to spend money that are in the digital medium that allow us to track traffic, return on investments, and things like that that make sure that we're attracting the right type of customers to our businesses. And most importantly, and I think what the title of the presentation is about is let's be purposeful and consistent. Let's be in the moment with what we're saying and kind of understand, you know, this has been an emotional time for everyone. So it's not so bad to have fun and kind of take people's minds off of what's happening in the daily life and perhaps get back to some of the things that we used to really enjoy, which down here in New Orleans and throughout Louisiana is a great meal, right? So overcoming the challenges of a lifetime in restaurant branding. Brand society is not going to change what we're going through in COVID-19. No advertising agency will. So we're not here to pretend to do that. However, we want to talk about how much has changed, but the principles of strategic marketing generally remain and always will remain the same, as long as we're disciplined with the strategy and we're approaching things in an academic manner that help us uncover what we should be doing. Now, a long time ago, this really smart guy that we may know as Bill Gates said something called content is king. Some advertisers will tell you that this phrase is 24 years old, and most of those same advertisers will tell you that it's still super relevant in what we do on a marketing and advertising and content building basis. And I start off with this because I'm going to show you some examples today on how great content encourages engagement, which adds value to your brand and ultimately will drive sales. We've seen it over and over again with instantly recognizable brands that hadn't done anything for years to startup brands that are instantly gaining traction in the marketplace today. We'll show you two examples, two case studies, if you will, of an instantly recognizable brand that had been around for a long time, always done things the right way, invested in marketing, and now has a pretty robust content management plan that they invested on an annual basis. Then we'll show you a relatively new brand that's just invested and showing some really good traction relative to traffic and sales based on this content development strategy that we have in place. However, your customer's always going to come before the content. What we always tell folks that we advise or come across is, please don't spend a dime in advertising before you understand who you're talking to. It's super strategic. It's super important to understand who that is because that drives everything else. It drives your voice. It drives the tone of your advertising. It drives what kind of content you develop. So we're going to start there today and begin to understand behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. Now, the next few slides will have a lot of data on them, and we call them personas. And we always say that you should know thy customer and understand the customer journey. This is for any brand, frankly, but it's super important for awareness in restaurants that are trying to drive interest in a really crowded category, right? Because there's all sorts of things to consider. So if you just follow this circle to me on the right, I said awareness, interest, consideration, the purchase experience. What we need to do is focus on that right side first, create awareness for our restaurant. We need to drive interest and then make sure that we're always in the consideration set so that they can experience our on-premise atmosphere in the food. Once that happens and they have a great experience, now you have retention. When you have retention, they start engaging with your brand and you have advocacy. Now you have really someone who's saying, this is great. They're taking pictures of their food, right? They're reposting it to your social media feeds. Certainly everyone on this session understands that that's important, but that's not the easiest thing in the world to achieve. Getting back to that customer, these are personas. So these are examples of things that we've built for our clients based on who we know after studying them and working with our operators and owners and managers. Who's coming in your door and purchasing that po' boy? Or who's coming in your door and purchasing that seafood platter? Is it a young family? Perhaps. If it is a young family, we need to understand what the demographics are, what their consumer habits are, the insights, their behaviors, their psychographics, the technology they're using. All of these things are going to drive how we, number one, build and create content for you, how you do it for yourself. And number two, how do you use these super accessible platforms like Facebook and Google to advertise and make sure that your ads are getting in front of them. Young families is just one example. Or we're attracting college students, or you're a sports bar that serves food near a college campus, or you're a sports bar in a city that's showing games on college football Saturday, and that's important to you. We need to understand these demographics as well, because these college students are going to be quite different than the millennial 34-year-old parents. Sports enthusiasts, again, reverting back to a sports bar, even a place that sells sandwiches on a Sunday and beer or whatever, or wings. You know, we can go on and on, but I wanted to show you guys three vastly different sets of what we call customer personas. You as an operator or a manager can do this. You can understand, you are there every day. You understand who's coming through your doors, and ultimately you know who you want to come through your doors. It's just taking the time to sit there and understand who they are. Once you have a framework, then you can hire a professional and say, I need to understand more about a sports enthusiast's habits, or what are their behaviors and psychographics, where they're consuming media. Once you have that, then we can get into the fun stuff, which is establishing a clear tone and voice. So if it's the millennial family, for example, we want to start inviting those folks or those customers to participate in our message. Again, we don't want to tell them we're the best restaurant in New Orleans and this is why you want to come eat. No, it's just, let's create some kind of conversation around why we believe we're the best restaurant in New Orleans, as opposed to just taking a picture of a seafood platter and popping it up. We're going to have some copy and some tone and some voice that encourages them to interact and go back to that circle that I showed you earlier, create awareness, and then ultimately execute an on-premise visit or a purchase. So what does all that mean? Sounds like a lot of marketing jargon and talk, but I'm going to quickly go through our first example, which is Acme Oyster House. We've been working with Acme, luckily now for 5 years. And if you remember early in the presentation, I talked about a well-established brand that decided to really invest in strategic marketing. Everybody knows Acme Oyster House. They've been successful way before Brand Society. However, we came in and said, let's go through this process. Let's understand who your customer is. Let's begin to build content that really sheds light on who we are as a brand. So we decided on this concept called Life's More Fun with Seafood. And you can see that obviously the millennial family and the older family environment was some of the personas that started to rise up. It's a humorous place. You like to have fun. You want to go there to watch a game. You want to go and started having fun and frankly making up words like rawsome and oysterific and these sorts of things. I'm showing you outdoor advertising at first, realizing that it's a traditional medium, but this medium often can allow you to show how content can really start to reinforce what your brand message is. And then ultimately get into some spaces. Again, remember, why is content king? Well, here's where it starts to take place in Instagram. And you can see how we have what we call consistency of message. which is super important in our world. You don't want it, if you're doing traditional advertising and you have the budget and the money to advertise in this world, you want to make sure that your traditional advertising is consistent with your digital. This is an example of how that happens for Acme. Acme Oyster House with Life's More Fun with Seafood. Again, diversity, showing that millennial family, kids, everybody having a good time watching the game and so on and so forth. You can see how the Facebook page resembles the same thing. If I had time to show you the copy that we wrote, we try to be super humorous and funny and engaging, asking, is it char grilled? Is it raw? Tell us and tell us why. So once you have all that in place, when I opened up, I mentioned some really affordable integration ways to tactically execute this stuff. All of that, which you just saw, takes quite a bit of effort and time and research to make sure that we land on the right place. Anybody can open up a Facebook page, open up Ads Manager and say, okay, I'm going to start advertising. But you take a picture of a hamburger and you start advertising that. How are you differentiating yourself? Don't do that. Do what I just showed you, and then get into some super fun, smart, deliberate, and strategic marketing, especially today in COVID's world, right? You want to get in front of people with a message that's super emotional, super fun, anything that represents your brand that creates interest, and say, you know what, I want to go there. I want to order takeout from there. And this is why. A lot of you may know about some of these tactics, but I wanted to share them with you today because there's a few things that you can do with this. You can hire someone to help you with it. A lot of this can be self-taught. And as long as you have what we would say is proper and relevant content, anybody can get in and spend a couple $1,000s a month and perhaps drive traffic to your restaurant. Things like Geo Fencing, right? This is a tactic that we use for a lot of our restaurant partners. If you are interested, for example, in attracting transients in the French Quarter, unfortunately, we have no transients in the French Quarter right now, but prior to the pandemic, we would deliberately set up ads for people who walked in the French Quarter and they had a location finder set on their phone. You would start seeing ads for a brand that we represent in a French Quarter, Acme Oyster House. So this is happening to you as a consumer all the time. I'm sure you notice it. And I'll go through some tactics that explain exactly what's happening when you see it on your phone. Taking geofencing a little bit further is something called display remarketing. So once we drive people to our website, we can understand who they are. After they leave our website, we'll then send them digital ads. So we're starting following around the internet until they execute an actual action, which sometimes is online ordering or a visit to our restaurant. There's something called display retargeting with geofencing. This takes remarketing even a step further. This allows us to reach individuals who have previously viewed specific products or pages on our site. So this is super important for restaurants that are very good and wish to develop their online ordering and takeout. Because what we can do is people who go to our takeout page, and they leave without executing an order, we can then give them an ad encouraging them to order online. So super smart, super fun technology that's not difficult to execute. There's something else called display competitor affinity audience with geofencing. And this simply allows us to reach the individuals who are showing interest in our competition. So if I sell oysters and there's another oyster brand and people are searching for that on the internet, we can intercept that data and then start showing ads. A lot of restaurants do this. If I'm selling pizza, there's a lot of pizza restaurants around. You could generally find out who is interested in pizza based on their Google search data, and then give them ads based on yours. So now, maybe a couple of restaurants are doing this. Who's going to win? The one with the most compelling content that makes the most sense for that audience, right? And in today's COVID world, particularly if we're in delivery or takeout, lots of options. Of course, there's other avenues out there, and there's Uber and there's Waiter. There's all sorts of things that are fighting us, but a lot of times we're starting with Google, right? We're going to do a search. We're going to see what's out there and available to us. If our SEO and our digital is not matching the content strategy, we're breaking up right at the beginning. And then display in marketing with geofencing. What this means is this allows us to reach individuals who have recently shown interest in ordering a takeout or lunch option. So you can just simply create a wide net of someone that says takeout near me. or takeout in mid-city New Orleans, or takeout in Lafayette, Louisiana, or takeout in Baton Rouge. You get the picture. If that is something that we're interested in, then, or seafood in New Orleans, and so on and so forth, we can begin to create impressions around those individuals to encourage online ordering, takeout, or even visits. Now, the whole COVID thing, right? So our messaging should be around some factors that are super important relative to being in the moment. Some of this is probably super obvious to you, but it's amazing, how many folks aren't doing it. Let's talk about QR codes on our menus, disposable menus. Do we have outdoor dining, right? Is our restaurant space spacious? All these things that you all know about as operators that we read in the news that some places are blatantly not following and they get shut down, particularly here in New Orleans, or the ones that are really doing it. Let's tell our customers, let's show our customers what we're doing to be super sanitized in this unprecedented time. That is going to gain confidence in the mind of the consumer who is questionable about visiting. Should I go there? Should I not? Should I go out to eat at all? Well, just take the step and show them what you're doing. And at least that is entered into consideration set as a positive and removed as a particular scare tactic. I'm not going to go. Before we leave today, I want to show you one quick one. I think I have about 5 minutes left, right, Wendy? Getting back to content is king. I showed you Acme, an established brand, but we also work with Fat Boys Pizza, which is a relatively new brand. And I just wanted to reinforce how when these operators and business owners realized they were sitting on something pretty special as it relates to a brand. So well, let's go through this process of understanding who we're talking to and develop a voice. Now, life's more fun with seafood for Acme, more to love with Fat Boys Pizza, right? This is particularly engaging for them because they serve these really large 30-inch pizzas, right? And it kind of separates them, and it's super funny. We built these ridiculous videos of what you can do with these boxes, and we actually just launched this a couple of weeks ago. And the reason I'm showing you this is because some of these tactics that I just showed you are being deployed by Fat Boys Pizza. They have a place in Metairie, they have one in Baton Rouge, and are opening one up in Covington. So if you search for pizza in Metairie, for example, you may go to NOLA.com a few hours later and you'll see an ad like this. And there's various versions of this creative where you click on this and then you'll be able to order online from Fat Boys Pizza. But then I wanted to show you some pillars on how consistency and message starts to come across. Again, another family environment, a casual restaurant like Acme, but totally different cuisine, right? This is pizza and not authentic New Orleans and Louisiana seafood. And you can see how we start to get fun with this voice. Sweaty pants. Sweatpants are sexy, more to give relative to the more to love, live life large, so on and so forth. And these pillars begin to activate in these way through social media. Another important thing for Fat Boys Pizza is their ingredients. This appeals to young families. It's all fresh ingredients. This whole thing about gathering big. This is to the sports fan and young family. We wanted to show you how if our demo matched up our personas earlier, what that could mean for pillared advertising, big on community, important to the owners of Fat Boys Pizza. And then you get to start to have lots of fun with ads that really start to stand out. So my point is, if you're taking a picture of a pasta dish and you post it on social media, but you have real content that's fun and engaging, which one do you think the consumer is gonna click that order now on or visit? Probably that content that's more engaging and interesting to them, right? Some lines that this is copy: more to love, live larger, live life large, bigger, better, so on and so forth. Let yourself go. Just some examples on how the voice can continue to expand. These are actual social media posts, art cards, we call them. And then hashtag banks, hashtag banks. So hashtagging super important with our content matching for organic growth on the top and for brand specific on the bottom. You'll see more to love, size matters, show us your slice, big box, and so on and so forth. This is what their Facebook page looks like for consistency. And then stylistic representation of what Instagram would look like. Again, consistency and message. They have a place right side, literally a block off of campus for LSU. So LSU is super important to them. And once you have all that in place, you can then start engaging in these super fun instant experience type ads on Instagram and Facebook, down to packaging, and how you can have fun on premise with a big idea where content becomes literally wearable as a brand voice. So as a recap, let's remember to be super purposeful and consistent. Communicate your safety plan, right? I just showed you brand examples. I didn't want to be obvious today and show people cleaning a table or show you QR codes on a menu. You guys know that. Let's get back to the specifics about branding, strategic insights, who our customers are, create content with a spatial setting and outdoor spatial settings and outdoor scenes. Talked about the disposable menu and QR codes, promote online ordering and takeout. These are all very simple to do. Anybody can do this, but if it doesn't ladder up, right, to the bigger idea, to the bigger planning purpose of who you are as a brand and who your customers are, then everybody else is just doing this and what you see on the screen right now. Remember, know your customer, create content that engages with that customer. Don't spend a dime on advertising before you plan 1 and 2 above, even if you do it on your own. From Facebook to traditional, there are many mediums available for you to reach your audience. Make sure your spend is measured. Whatever you do, make sure you can go back, take your spend, measure it against your annual success, and you'll start to see if your advertising is driving your business or not. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
You talked about safety and sanitation and showing that, but not in an obvious way.
Mhm.
And in the Fat Boys Pizza, I noticed that in their community pillar, where the girl is, the woman in scrubs is standing next to the big stack of pizza, she's got her mask on.
Mhm.
Like, that's kind of a subtle way, even, they're delivering to a hospital, but they're also showing someone in the how we're wearing things right now. What are some other ways that you could do it subtly without, is it someone cleaning in the background of a picture? Is it stepping back and showing the dining room and how spacious it is? Like,
100%. It's like, for example, back to that example you just showed. I'm glad you brought that up. Gabe, the owner of Fat Boys Pizza, actually, goes on these deliveries. When early on in COVID, they were delivering these 30-inch pizzas to healthcare workers. They're still doing it. But some of the content was actually he and his staff wearing, masks, delivering these to these healthcare workers. Again, a subtle way of delivering food, but taking safety precautions. Also fun ways, show the space in between your tables and write clever copy about it, right? Something that somebody would chuckle about, whatever that may be. That's where copywriting becomes involved. And sometimes you need somebody that understands how to be funny through post to do that. But just saying our tables are 6 feet apart, sure, that's fine. You could do that. And maybe that works. But as an advertiser, there needs to be a little more edge to it, right? In our opinion.
so you can take you can be funny and, clever. This is the place. Social media is the place for that. If your brand is compatible for that.
100%. I mean, it has to be right for who you are as a brand. If you're more serious, Tony, you're an upscale establishment, you're not interested in being funny, I get it, because it's not funny, it's serious. That's when it's really about a meal and fine dining, right? But there are ways to ladder that up into a bigger safety measure. Maybe that's when you say exactly what's happening relative to your safety plan and you show your plan, right? In like a 5-step session, because your clientele is going to be much different there. And the people walking in and out of your restaurant on a nightly basis are very different than perhaps going to a quick serve casual restaurant to watch a game.
Now, one of the things that we talked about before this was, what if you're in a tourist destination and right now you don't have a lot of tourists? Like, how do you shift to focus on the locals? What's the best way to do that?
Well, yeah, I got to be honest, Wendy, I wish I had the answer to that, right? Because that's really what's hurting us here in New Orleans is no one is here, and the people that are generally visiting, particularly during a fall season like this for football games, are not coming. And a lot of those brands are really built for the tourist experience, which is a great thing. So taking that concept and kind of flipping it on its back and attracting locals is a little difficult, admittedly, particularly in a time when people don't want to venture out as much. So you have two things fighting for you: less traffic from the tourists and less traffic from the locals. But again, if you build a voice and you start connecting with locals, without naming names, I'm looking right at the French Quarter right now. I'm looking at a restaurant that some people would say only tourists go to, but I've seen them on social media connecting to locals because they serve po' boys, and they've been doing it for 100 years. So it's about just connection and telling people what you do and that you're open and that you need to come support us because we've been around for this long and we've been around for this community and so on and so forth. That's that emotional tug. I think that works.
Yeah. So can we talk about geofencing for a minute? And
Sure.
can you really explain, like you said, I'm walking in, you're capturing folks that are walking into the French Quarter, for example.
That's right.
I heard of an operator tell me something interesting as to how they geofence. They don't geofence their direct competitor. They geofence other types of cuisine that someone might choose for
Mm-hmm.
lunch, and they try to capture that customer to change their mind and decide that they want to come eat at this restaurant today.
Yeah,
So what are some different ways to think about geofencing?
I think that's a smart approach. Now I want to be clear. While the technology is super flexible in what you can do, putting a geofence around one restaurant generally is not possible. You need to have like a larger, a city block, for example. So if you know that there's a restaurant in a city block that you're interested in, you could certainly do that. Now, what is interesting about what I showed you, geofencing, that's why I took it through the steps. You can add layers to it, right? So if we geofence 4 blocks in the French Quarter, but we also know those folks who are searching for best seafood in the French Quarter, now we have 2 pieces of data, right? That show us that someone is super interested in the type of cuisine that we offer. So once we start seeing and aggregating that, then we can start purposing ads in front of those individuals as well. So I think geofencing is a good place to start, but remarketing in general through these platforms is super effective if you're using all the tools available to you. So you're not limiting yourself. But back to your question, if you're just interested in putting a technology fence around 5 city blocks, and anybody who's interested, not exactly competition, but anything that you could deem as a similar interest to what you do, or someone who seems to be a target for your restaurant, and you can certainly repurpose ads in front of it.
So we have a question from Mary LeBlanc, and she says, our restaurant has been predominantly using Facebook for social media. Our demo is number 1, female 50 to 70, and number 2, young moms 25 to 40.
Mm-hmm.
Would you recommend a second or third outlet?
So that's an awesome question, right?
Hold on, she's not finished.
Okay, sorry.
Young friend recommended TikTok yesterday. However, I feel that is too young a demo for our cafe.
Okay. So goes the questions in life of digital marketing. So that's a great question. So Facebook, right? And this is probably about a 5-year-old answer now, but it still holds true. So when all the parents started getting on Facebook, all the kids started going to Instagram 5 to 7 years ago. So Facebook generally tends to be an older platform, social platform, and Instagram generally tends to be a younger one. However, those Instagram adopters from 5 to 10 years ago are now getting a little bit older, which here comes TikTok, right? So you have a super young demographic that interacts on TikTok. Now, aside from the really big brands that have tons of money to figure things out quickly, a lot of folks are still trying to understand what TikTok can do for their brand. So to answer the question, okay, what I would do is address my younger audience on Instagram, which is actually owned by Facebook, and my older audience on Facebook. I have to, and that, now sometimes it may require different type of content on two different platforms. But as a broad answer to the question, the younger audience, especially female, is going to be on Instagram, and then your older audience is going to be on Facebook. Now, other things that you should look into are like search engine marketing. Make sure in your area, and then and that you're perhaps buying keywords and purposing phrases. And purposing ads in front of those individuals. And secondarily to that, make sure that your site is properly optimized. Search engine optimization, which is a little different. That has to do with how your site's built and how it performs on the back end regarding organic results. And if people are searching for, club sandwiches in my neighborhood, make sure that your site is properly built to react to that type of search.
Any other questions? I mean, I could keep asking these questions all day. So let's talk about retargeting and then pricing, because if you've never purchased Facebook ads or retargeting ads, you may not have any idea like how inexpensive they can be.
Yeah.
I mean, can you talk to that for a moment?
So in advertising, we usually measure things by like a cost per thousand. How much is it costing me to reach, 1,000 impressions, which an impression is an ad that an individual with eyeballs have seen. And generally speaking, if you're not buying through a third party and you're hiring somebody to just directly purchase the ads, you're looking at a cost per thousand of anywhere between $5 and $7. Okay, it can get a little lower than that once you start getting things super optimized based on experience. But that means for every $5 to $7, as an example, I'm reaching 1,000 sets of eyeballs. It may not be 1,000 individuals. It could be I'm reaching 500 people 2 times. Again, without getting really into media measurements, that could show you the effectiveness of it, though, right? So if I'm spending $1,000, multiply that times that CPM I just showed you, and it shows you how many people you can reach. Long answer to a short question, but at the end of the day, if you're a 1-unit operation, there's no reason why, you can't get away with spending $500 to $750 a month and driving some real interest in your place, so long that your content is on point relative to your consumer. You should be driving engagement, which ultimately should drive visits to your restaurant.
And sales.
That's right.
Butts and seats.
That's right.
Or takeout, curbside.
100%.
Well, I don't see any more questions in the box right now. And that was very interesting. And I've enjoyed my time with you both today and in preparation for today. Please remember that these sessions are being recorded and will be available on our website at LRA.org should you want to revisit any of the information presented. Those who have attended this brand experience with Brand Society today will be entered into a drawing for a Rhineland cutlery carving set valued at $150. And the winner will be notified via email tomorrow, later this week. Stick around for our next and final session of LRA Live, presented by Republic National Distributing Company, with Bruce Tulgan, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. He'll give us some tips and tricks for how to be successful and not be over committed, and say yes to the right things that you need to be doing. So with that, thank you so much, Troy. I appreciate it. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you at the next session.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.